Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving into, well, a really pivotal period, the group's long engagement with the Library of Carr. This spanned quite a chunk of time, from about May 2024 right through the end of that year. It was a crucial time, definitely. They were acquiring vital resources, but also facing some pretty serious threats, both inside and out.
Indeed, and pivotal is the right word, but not just for growth. It was, a real crucible, a period of frankly immense volatility that forced the group's hand. Often, I'd argue, without the kind of preparation you'd want to see.
Right, so the central question we need to grapple with today is this. Was the group's performance during this whole Library of Carr arc, was it ultimately a strategic success defined by, let's say, calculated acquisition of expertise, maybe some powerful allies, or was it more of a costly failure, marked by, well, poor tactical execution and maybe a systemic inability to really secure and manage their resources efficiently? My stance is that the library arc was a definitive long-term success. You look at the evidence, the comprehensive gains in knowledge, capturing that major entity, it points to success.
hmm And I come at it from a fundamentally different angle. I believe the arc really exposed some serious, recurring tactical weaknesses and, frankly, demonstrated profound resource mismanagement. Sure, the inventory grew, no doubt, but the period was just fraught with unnecessary risks, suggesting to me systemic operational failure, not, strategic mastery.
Okay, well, let's look at the facts, specifically regarding those strategic gains. The primary objective, the reason they went into the library in the first place, was this massive expansion of core capabilities, things they couldn't easily get elsewhere. And that goal? It was overwhelmingly achieved. We have a pretty clear timeline here that shows how their operational power dynamic fundamentally shifted, just in a matter of months. Mid-arc, they secured arcane tomes, that was July 29th, then foundational priest spells on August 19th. By September 16th, they'd obtained specialized psionic abilities, that's a whole new dimension really for their operational capacity, and this sort of culminated with beguiler spells by October 7th. Now these aren't minor tweaks, these are foundational powers. They guarantee long-term viability, the ability to counter really diverse threats.
The list is impressive, I grant you that. But the cost of execution, fundamentally undermines the value of those acquisitions, in my view.
Hold on, let me finish this point. Furthermore, the culmination of all this new knowledge was a demonstrated high-level strategic capacity. I mean, look at December 9th. Sindri successfully captures Meridoc, the Devil Lord. Now, Meridoc's capture wasn't just, a high-value trophy. It gave the group a unique, integrated lever into extraplanar negotiations. It secured a long-term intelligence asset they just didn't have before that fundamentally shifted their posture towards external threats. That single strategic win arguably justifies the entire endeavor. And let's not forget, they also successfully navigated various external threats, pushing back the Khan's men, avoiding those fireballs back in June, managing the wildlife like the Githan wasps the guide warned them about early on. They left the library a fundamentally stronger, more self-aware unit. They even confirmed on October 14th, and I quote, "The cleric is the most dangerous in the party," which indicates to me improved internal assessment skills.
Okay, I concede the undeniable increase in raw capability. That's clear. But let me offer a perspective centered more on, let's call it operational rigor. Because while the acquisition log looks good on paper, the operational cost, the tactical sloppiness, it suggests a real failure to leverage those gains safely or even consistently. The group was repeatedly caught flat-footed. They walked, and the log says, right into it, when they were ambushed in the sorting room on November 18th. You could almost, picture the campaign manager sighing when reading that entry. And this failure to scout or anticipate, it wasn't a one-off. They faced another, quote, expected ambush when they returned to that exact same area months later, in March 2025. This pattern, it indicates a profound failure to learn basic operational security lessons, regardless of how many shiny new spells they picked up.
Or critically, think about the losses that happened simultaneously with what you're calling a high point.
On the very same day Meridak was captured, December 9th, Vanilla, a core frontline asset was completely incapacitated, turned to water in the lore room. I mean, that degree of tactical oversight, in what they knew was a volatile magical environment, it's frankly inexcusable. And moreover, they failed repeatedly to prevent the recurring bottle infestation problem. That was an internal security breach noted on November 25th, and it ultimately led to the discovery on December 30th that, quote, much of our hard-earned treasure is missing. So the overall efficiency of the entire arc was just dragged down by poor asset management and containment failures.
I hear you on the treasure, but I'm just not convinced that minor logistical losses and, okay, a significant tactical setback for one member negate a massive strategic shift in the group's overall power. The successful acquisition of core abilities Arcane, Cleric, Psionics, it fundamentally altered their power profile. They weren't just relying on brute force anymore. And the ability they gained later to enhance items after defeating that strange creature in June 2025, that's a direct, long-term benefit leveraged from the advanced knowledge they got inside the library. Minor treasure loss, while sure it's frustrating, it's easily overshadowed by the capacity to capture a Devil Lord and integrate powerful new magic systems. Systems that let them tackle threats they previously couldn't even consider.
But the price of execution, Advocate, it was consistently too high for those gains to be called purely strategic success. The operational environment was chaotic, yes, but their execution often relied on sheer luck or raw power rather than consistent, repeatable strategy. Take the immediate aftermath of that November 18th ambush you mentioned. Just a week later, the log describes clearing the same sorting room as easy as piss. I mean, that sudden swing to overconfidence right after a major tactical blunder demonstrates a really dangerous inconsistency. They didn't secure their position effectively, they just threw more power at the problem, survived, and declared victory prematurely. And furthermore, the path to getting powerful assets like those Beguiler spells, it meant facing hostile, high-risk environments, like that Drow encounter back on August 12th. The group consistently chose, it seems, maximal exposure over calculated risk management.
You're framing resilience as a failure, though. We have to acknowledge that the strategic pursuit of overwhelming power is a strategy in itself. It's one designed, perhaps, specifically to preempt the need for perfect tactical maneuvering in every single instance. They went into the library to become, well, practically unstoppable, and arguably they achieved that. The acquisition timeline is proof of a high-level strategic plan being executed and executed successfully despite, the inevitable operational friction along the way.
Okay. If that is the strategy just become unstoppable, then why was the group apparently incapable of preventing contained problems from metastasizing? That recurring bottle infestation problem isn't just a minor logistical hiccup. It points to a profound failure of internal resource security. This repeated vulnerability, this failure to manage a threat they themselves contained, it ultimately resulted in the significant loss of hard-earned treasure right at the end of the year. That failure, that lack of diligence and operational rigor, it fundamentally undermines any claim of comprehensive strategic success. If you can't even manage the assets you've just acquired, the acquisition itself becomes fundamentally inefficient, doesn't it?
That's a compelling point regarding the internal resource failure. I'll grant you that. But have you fully considered the strategic counterbalance? The capture of Meridak on December 9th wasn't just luck. It demonstrated the group's unique ability to rapidly capitalize on specialized knowledge gained from the lore room, for these really high-stakes strategic wins. Meridak's capture is a monumentally more significant external achievement than preventing a few missing gold coins internally. We're really comparing apples and strategic-level satellites here. And moreover, those engagements you seem to dismiss as mere distractions, freeing the insane hippo people, negotiating safe passage for those Aarakocra who were stranded for 50 years, that wasn't wasted time. It demonstrated diplomatic flexibility, problem-solving skills that go way beyond simple combat efficiency. The ability to integrate new factions, solve complex social problems, even leveraging things like random portals. That shows a comprehensive growth in strategic thinking, not just brute force application.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that a few diplomatic side quests somehow cancel out the operational debt they incurred. The core issue, for me, remains the unnecessary vulnerability of party members. Vanilla's fate is the prime example, and their continued susceptibility to being caught completely unaware. The log explicitly states they totally walked right into it. The group survived, yes, absolutely, but often it seems due to individual character resilience, sheer toughness, raw power, not because of repeatable, consistent, high-level strategy. When they pushed into the Muldrin Zone later, the log kind of reflects this dependence on innate strength, with comments like Choco can't die. That's survival through resilience, advocate. That's not a refinement of method.
But survival through targeted resilience, coupled with a massive influx of refined, specialized power, that is exactly what defines strategic success in this context. The period concluded with the group possessing enhanced item power. Remember, the ability to boost several items a further +1 was unlocked right after this arc, and a deep bench of spells and psionics. That allows them to shrug off tactical errors that might have crippled them before. They leverage the library's complex, finite resources for long-term benefit. They emerged with the tools they absolutely needed to tackle the next phase of conflict, having pushed back major rivals like the Consman and secured vital intelligence assets like Meridoc. They chose strategic leverage over tactical caution, and well, the results, the power they now wield, speak for themselves.
I still must conclude by reiterating that the library arc revealed deep, and I think dangerous, tactical flaws. The group fundamentally traded safety and consistency for raw, potentially destabilizing power. The constant ambushes, the incident that cost them a core party member temporarily, combined with losing treasure due to poor internal management, it all suggests that the group acquired expensive new tools without really developing the necessary skill set, or maybe the discipline, to wield them reliably. They left the library undeniably more powerful, yes, but they also left, I fear, dangerously overconfident and still exposed to the same basic operational vulnerabilities they failed to address throughout the entire period.
Okay, it's clear we continue to disagree on the weight we assign to tactical setbacks versus those big strategic gains. The Library of Karark definitely represent a necessary tension, perhaps. The group experienced significant functional gains, the spells, psionics, the capture of Meridoc, which was huge, but those achievements were, yes, indeed accompanied by notable tactical setbacks, from the ambushes you highlighted to the eventual resource loss from that bottle infestation.
The group is undeniably more powerful now, but the events revealed that the tension was often resolved through, well, brute force and individual capacity rather than calculated precision. Our listeners really must weigh for themselves whether the high-value foundational gains truly justified the consistent risks and the clear operational flaws incurred throughout that period.
And we leave it to you to determine whether that strategic leap ultimately justified the tactical price paid. The log material certainly demands a continued analysis looking forward to see whether these newly acquired abilities were actually used to correct those observed tactical errors in later encounters. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.